Welcome to Breaking It Down. I'm your host, Skylar Baylog. Today I'm here with Taylor Oliver, and she's going to tell us about the Alpena Library situation. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I guess to start with, what is your background?
Well, I grew up in the Alpena area. Actually grew up going to the Alpena Library myself as a kid, and I am now a homeschooling mother, and we use a lot of books, and I guess in relation to that specifically, we have a lot of reason to use the library and to see it thriving and support it in its cause.
So I guess with that issue that came up, and there was a millage or something in the summer, is that correct?
So yeah, at the last, the voting prior to the main election, there was a millage that did pass for the library to be renewed, yes.
So you've been going to the library for how many years? You said all your life, or
yeah,
pretty much?
I'd venture to say all my life. I mean,
Okay.
as soon as my parents would have brought me in, probably 2 or 3 years old, or even sooner.
And what got you involved? I guess when did you notice something with the library?
Yeah. So as I said, I'm a homeschooling mom, and so my daughter, who was 5 or 6 years old at the time, I went in with her, and we were just kind of browsing the stacks. Happened to be in the anatomy section because I was looking for a book on the body, and I, again, homeschool, so it was kind of a science opportunity for my kids and I to look through a book. And so I was looking for one for that purpose, and I happened to pick up a book that really alarmed me to find in that section, and it really could have just as easily been my daughter who picked it up. But I opened it up and I saw images of adults fully naked, engaged in sexual intercourse. Flipped through the book, I found pictures of nude adults standing next to nude children. I was just obviously alarmed at that, to find it so easily accessed by children. And it could have, again, just as easily been her. So that was where my concern was first spiked. And so I brought it to the librarian at that point and just said, is this in the right section? Can we talk about this? Maybe we could put it in a place that it's not so easily accessible by the kids. And from that point, I was kind of given the runaround for a few years.
Which seems reasonable. Why would you want kids accessing that? I mean,
Yeah.
What did they say when you brought that up to them? Did you bring it up right away, or did you kind of investigate a little more? Or?
Yeah, so I brought it right up to the children's librarian at the time. There was actually, I think it wasn't the official librarian, there was an assistant. And so she said that she would get it to the children's librarian, and then the children's librarian would get back to me. And that didn't happen. So I came back in, we frequent the library, maybe a week or two later, and I just said, hey, what's the news on this? Did we, come to a conclusion, or is there any feedback for me on what the deal is with this book? And then I was actually given an introduction to the official children's librarian at that point, and she told me that I needed to fill out a form. So I said, okay, can I have the form? I don't know that she would have even offered it to me. It was kind of a runaround, it felt like, where I had to do a lot of pursuing to make it happen. So I got the form and I filled it out right there, and I turned it right in because I didn't want to delay anything. And then I didn't hear anything back from them. So it was a few months later, I came back in, I said, I filled out this form, what's the next step with this? And they said, well, the director should get back with you. And I said, okay, when can I expect that to happen? And they said, hopefully in the next few weeks. So it was actually the following week. This was months now since the first time I had picked up the book.
And I'm sorry, what year was the first time you picked up the book?
I believe it was 2022.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look at my notes on that for sure. But so then I did get a letter in the mail, and it was just a basic form letter. You could tell that they have, written up nothing personalized to the situation, but just except for the book title was inserted, and it just said, we've deemed that this book is appropriate for this age section, and it's going to stay there, and here's a bunch of things from the ALA, and here's why we're doing this kind of thing. So that was the extent of where I got. And at that point, I could tell that the library wasn't really interested in doing anything about it. I wasn't sure about what the next steps would have been to, like, debate that.
Did they say, like, who signed off on it, or what kind of process is that, like, reviewing the book? Is it just kind of, I guess, how does that work? Do you just sign up for them and it goes to who knows where, and then it kind of comes back to you from who knows who, or?
So essentially, that's what did happen.
Okay.
They do technically have a policy in place that they weren't really following at the time.
Okay.
So that was the director, at the time it was interim director, Jessica Luther, who sent me that letter. And from there, I started getting involved with the community a little bit more about it, because I saw that there was some resistance from the library themselves. And so I just really, personally, just wanted to make parents aware, like, this is in the library.
Did they say why, though? I don't get why there's resistance. It's in a kids section. Like, I don't get what's... Did they say why, or did they just say we can put it in and kind of we don't care what you say?
The very first conversation I had with the children's librarian really indicated to me what her stance was, which is essentially that she said we have an obligation to serve everyone in the community, and you might find things in there that you disagree with, and you might want things in there that other people disagree with, and as taxpayers you all have a right to what you want to see in the library. So that was kind of the basis for the reasoning, that they weren't going to move it because there were some patrons who wanted it there.
I'd like to find someone who wants that kind of book in a kids section. I'd be very curious to hear their stance on that and see if they could defend it. But
yeah.
It's
It's really odd and concerning to me that anybody would want to have that for their children. Honestly, eventually we started going to the board meetings a lot more, and at that kind of, like, there was one board meeting that just had like a huge outpouring of people at it shortly before the vote, and there were actually a couple parents who stood up and said, I have this book at home, and I'm glad I have it, and I'm glad other people in the community have it to access for their children. And I was actually really surprised to hear that. I thought that I would not find anyone who was in favor of the book, truly. So I guess there are some out there.
But how they parent at home versus the taxpayer-funded library seems like two separate issues, doesn't it?
I would say so. Yeah.
So you kind of started getting involved in the community, you said, and then kind of what happened from there?
So the next step for me, I'm involved in some mom groups, and I actually run a little bit of a nonprofit and work with another nonprofit that are mom support groups. And so it was natural for me to take to Facebook and create a group, and so that's what I did. So I created a safe library group based on, I had started doing some research because apparently this is a very common issue all around the nation, and there are a lot of other groups that are doing the same, sort of fighting their library to remove or limit access to these sexually graphic content books. And so I found a couple of other groups, and I kind of mimicked what they're doing to create our own group. So I found one in, I think it was Alabama, and I just asked permission to kind of copy what they were doing and started inviting people. I posted pictures of the books that I was concerned about, excerpts from the books. I posted the details of the letter that I received from the director and all the interactions I had. I started calling the library, talking to them about their policies. Another policy that was a little bit concerning to me that I found out was that any child with a library card can check out any book in the library without a parent's permission. So that includes adult content, anything, just not DVDs.
Is there a way that the librarian, though, like if a kid takes in a card and tries to get a book that's inappropriate, does the librarian, is there any kind of like, well, maybe you
So I asked them that.
Yeah.
You would think there would be some hesitation,
Yeah.
but they said no. They said that would be the parent's responsibility, and they can't act in loco parentis. They like to use that term, which is just obviously in the place of the parent. But I feel as a community member, you have this sort of responsibility to take care of kids.
Right.
You know, like, kids are vulnerable. They're a vulnerable population, and they don't have all the same rights as adults do, and for good reason. There's limits on their freedom of speech. There's limits on information.
Well, especially like you said too. I mean, you went there as a kid, and you would think that your kids. I mean, you kind of hope that your kids could enjoy the kind of the same experiences you had.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really frustrating to me that now I can't take my kids there and they can't just browse the stacks. That will never happen again for my kids.
So, from my understanding, the whole board was removed, or kind of the process was started or something, and then the millage after that passed. Is that correct?
Yes and no.
Okay.
The commissioners promised that the board would be removed, and then the millage passed, I believe because of what they said. The margin was very slim. It was extremely close. I think 40 or more % voted against the millage. Mm-hmm. And this was even after a lot of people said, no, let's, because the commissioners are now saying they're going to remove the board, let's vote for the library. A lot of people said, let's do it. So I believe because of what they said, that the millage passed. But then afterward, it turned out to be just words, I think. So there was one board member who stepped down, and then there's another one whose term is coming up in January, I believe. But the commissioners essentially have done nothing since then, and have kind of backtracked and said they're not going to remove anyone.
So I mean, I guess, I don't think anybody really wants those kind of books in there. What's the next steps so that that spot might be filled by someone, hopefully, that doesn't think inappropriate books should be in children's hands from the library?
Yeah. I mean, community members need to be more involved. So it did help to have people come into the board meetings and making their voices heard, but also like we need people to serve on the board. And so there are a couple of people who are interested in that position that I think would be good for the position. And hopefully we'll see a change from the inside there.
And what if it doesn't change? Like, what do you see parents more and more just not going to the library, or what do you think? I mean, if nothing's done, let's just say it continues kind of as is.
Yeah, I think there will be a lot less activity at the library, which I think they're already seeing that, unfortunately. It's really sad because it's a beautiful facility. There's a lot of good things that they have done in the past and continue to do. But yeah, if they're not willing to listen to the people who are paying the taxes to support the library, then they're going to get heard. I mean,
and just to I guess to wrap it up, all you're asking is that these books that are clearly not for kids be put in the adult section. That's all you're asking for. And
I've even said, as little as just move them to a different spot.
Right.
Like just something to indicate, this needs a little bit more parental supervision, a little bit more, like, I wouldn't normally expect that kind of content in the children's section, that kind of graphic sexual content.
Well, it's also your money.
Right.
So, I mean, you obviously have a say over what happens to your money.
For sure.
So, yeah, as a taxpayer.
Yeah, I'd love to see it in the adult section. That would be great.
Well, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm just thankful for the opportunity to have some light shed on this issue. As you've said as well yourself, just there's been a lot of misinformation and a misunderstanding about what's happening at the library. I really hope that people look at the books for themselves, because I think if you don't see it, you don't believe that it's really in there.
A large retail store just canceled a huge order, leaving us with a ton of extra MyPillows. But you know what? That's their loss. I'm going to make it your gain. For the first time ever, you get standard classic MyPillows for wholesale prices, only $14.88. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.88. But it gets even better. For a limited time, I'm going to offer my entire classic collection at wholesale prices. Upgrade to a queen-size MyPillow for just $18.88. King size only $1 more. Get my body pillows for $29.88 and multi-use MyPillows for only $9.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on the screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever on TV, including my standard size MyPillow, only $14.88. They've never been offered this low before. We have limited quantities at this price, so limit's going to be 10, and once they're gone, they're gone.